super real and I lost my wife and my life is over and I want to kill myself, it's real. It's the uncertainty that I struggle with the most. Now, I'll admit I don't sleep very well since I've left.
You wonderful human being, welcome back to the inner church, where I make the connection between what people say, do or have and their inner voice. Forget the complicated stuff that people tell you or sometimes even lie about, and also forget all the nice pinned videos you will find on YouTube. This channel only deals with the basic stuff and raw human conversations and the translation to the inner voice. Today I dive into the second part of a conversation between Andrew Tate and David Sutcliffe, who is a psychotherapist, and they talk about all the things that happen in Andrew's life. And I reveal how his way of thinking also is tied to the inner voice. But before we dive into this video, I suggest you first watch the first part, where we discuss illusion of self-knowledge, human programming and depression. Okay, now let's go on with this video.
You said you experienced depression, some form of depression or depressive feelings and sadness in prison. What were the thoughts that were coming up? What was happening?
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty, which is the first thing
That has to be scary.
It is scary. It's scary.
And also because you're a man who's totally in control of your world, of your life, and that's almost like an imperative for you. Correct. And that gives you power. And all of a sudden you're thrust into a situation where you're essentially helpless.
Well, you just nailed it. You completely nailed it, because I was exactly about to say it's the uncertainty that I struggle with the most, because in my life I'm in charge of everything. I know exactly how everything works and I'm the boss and I get to control absolutely everything. And this is the first time in a long time I'm in a scenario where I have no power whatsoever, no influence, basically. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody else knows what's going to happen. And also in my worldview, in my world, I'm the hero, right? I'm the head of the clan, not just my family, but of a lot of people. A lot of people rely on me. Lots of women rely on me, children rely on me, etc. So everyone comes to me every time there's a problem. So they continue to do that while I'm in a jail cell, expecting me to have some kind of answer. Right. And I'm like, well, I don't have an answer this time. Every other time I had an answer, but this time is a bit unique.
How did that feel? You don't have the answers. You can't help.
Yeah, I mean, it was frustrating. It's very frustrating, and it's the uncertainty that would bother me. I don't think I felt sad very often, but I certainly felt extremely frustrated. I would sit there and think, there has to be a way out of this room. Not breakout, but like there must just be some words I can say, someone I can talk to. There must be a way. It's only a door. Like I can't just be stuck in this room. And it was hyper frustrating. Yeah, and the uncertainty of it is also scary, because in my situation, every 30 days they decide if they hold you longer or not. And I was encountering.
Okay, let me stop it right here, because there's already a lot we need to unpack. But first, let's take a look at uncertainty and loss of control from a psychological standpoint, because Susan Jeffers, author of Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, suggests that our fear of uncertainty is actually a fear of loss of control. The more we strive to secure absolute control, the more we are faced with the reality of life's inherent unpredictability. This paradox creates a cycle of anxiety. Jeffers teaches us that embracing uncertainty can paradoxically lead to a greater sense of control over our lives by accepting what we cannot change and focusing on what we can. Okay, now let's translate this to the inner voice, and also share your point of view about the inner voice in the comments below. Of course, uncertainty and loss of control are tied together. But if we translate this to the inner voice, it means that you are insecure about things. And if you do not have control, you become insecure. Because the more control you have over a situation, the more secure you will become. So for us, it's just a matter of thinking about the two inner voices. the voice of insecurity and the voice of security. And loss of control and uncertainty can result and will probably result in an increased voice of insecurity. So the voice of insecurity becomes more dominant, becomes louder in your head, and you talk more in your head with the voice of insecurity. And probably when you talk to other people, you also talk more with the voice of insecurity, with all the words that that voice has in its vocabulary. It's more about, I cannot handle this, I hate it that I have no control, and all the things. Basically what Andrew was talking about, because in his other situation, he is in control. He is the leader. He tells everybody what's to know. He knows when things happen. And that's the voice of security that's doing the talking. So for us, it's just the balancing act of the voice of insecurity and the voice of security. It's that simple. And with that special power, that knowledge of the two inner voices and how to balance them, you can turn every situation, even uncertainty and loss of control, in a more secure, increased voice of security. You have tools for that. You can ignore the voice of insecurity. Just ignore all the feelings that you have about losing control. And then perhaps be inspired and amused by that feeling or by all those words that you talk about in your head. And then let yourself be guided by the voice of security. Remember all the times that you did have control, or the situations or the moments that you still can control, even if you are in prison. And that's what Andrew is doing. He focuses on the things that he can control. And later on in this discussion, he explains that he has a lot of things to do, a lot of things on his plate. So he did not have time to feel sorry about himself, to feel more insecure. So you let yourself be guided by the voice of security. And then you take action. You do things, push-ups or whatever. You do stuff. And then you understand in the fifth transformations that both inner voices will always be there. So you just have to acknowledge them both, befriend them both. And that's how you balance your two inner voices. It can also be through faith or belief in, for instance, Christianity. That can help you deal with the insecurity because your belief in the God or whatever religion you follow. So this is all about the two inner voices. So let's get to the next part. But first, a message of encouragement. The only way I can grow this channel is for you to simply hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. So can you please do that now? By doing so, together we both can explore a wide area of topics like faith, religion, Christianity, Judaism, spirituality, law of attraction, consciousness, atheism, human behavior and emotions, mindfulness, success, wealth, happiness, relationships, parenting, and even thought-provoking topics like identity politics, virtue signaling, cancer culture, diversity, gender, conspiracy theories, and politics. All through our unique inner church lens. Discover how the inner voice shapes conversations and gain the power to master your own inner voice, making your dreams come true. Thank you, and now back to the video.
Well, the uncertainty is a form of torture, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's torture.
It is torture. And it's designed to make you break. You don't know how long you're going to be there for. Nobody knows. You hear horror stories. You see other people getting out who've done worse things than you after a week because they've signed a piece of paper or admitted to something or whatever they've done a deal. And you're sitting there and yeah, it's hyper frustrating. And I think you have two choices as a man. Often when bad things happen, I feel like you can maybe get depressed and sad about it, but the other outlet's usually anger or a form of anger. I felt like anger was more, in many cases, anger is more effective, I guess. It's more useful.
You were angry in there?
I wouldn't say I was angry, but if I started to feel negative, I could turn it into frustration or anger, which I could at least alleviate with 2,000 push-ups. It's better than feeling sorry for myself. I feel like if I had to choose one of the two outlets, deciding to use controlled anger was more beneficial than sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I don't ever believe in moping or feeling sad. So when I was at my worst, perhaps I was a little bit angry. But then again, I also think I do that in my normal life. If I'm honest, I don't think anger is a necessarily bad thing. I think that misdirected anger is a bad thing. I think if you get very angry about scenarios and you put it in the correct direction, you get unlimited motivation and you get a lot done. The water behind the dam, it can be destructive, but if it's pushing through the turbine, it powers the town, right? So if I wake up and I go, I want more money, if I can get pissed off enough about it, I can do 36-hour work days, right? So there's nothing wrong with being angry in my world as long as you are putting it in the correct direction. It's uncontrolled anger, I think, is a problem.
Right.
Okay, here Andrew talks about creating uncertainty in prison can be used as torture mechanism, and that he decides to respond with controlled anger. Because according to Andrew, this is better than feeling sorry for yourself. And because he's probably aware of the cameras, he adds that misdirected anger is a bad thing. Okay, now again, let's take a look at uncertainty and torture from a psychological standpoint. Because, for instance, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, in his explorations of trauma, sheds light on how uncertainty can act as a form of psychological torture. The brain's need for a coherent narrative is thwarted by not knowing, leaving us in a state of hyperarousal and vigilance. This can lead to a chronic stress response similar to the effects of psychological or emotional trauma as the mind struggles to prepare for a threat it can neither identify nor combat effectively. Okay, now let's again use the inner voice instead of all this complicated stuff. And let me know in the comments how your inner voice impacts your life. Uncertainty can feel as torture, but it only feels as torture with people who are not able to take control of their thinking. And the best way to take control of your thinking is to be aware of your two inner voices. If you are aware how the two inner voices shape your life and the effect, for instance, that the voice of insecurity will have of your state of being, how you will feel, you can increase the voice of security or lower the voice of insecurity. And torture as a psychological result of uncertainty is because you do not have control of your two inner voices. The voice of insecurity is a dominant voice in your head. And if that voice of insecurity is the dominant voice and you talk negative to yourself, it can feel as torture. And you can experience real pain. Because the mind and the brain is capable of making you believe that you are in actual hurt. But there are tools you can use to increase your certainty, the voice of security. Because when you are more secure about things, that means that you know that you're good at something, that you know you can predict the outcome. And if you can predict the outcome with a high degree of certainty and that the outcome is positive, you will not experience torture. So it's all the balancing act of your two inner voices. And basically that's what they are talking about without them even being aware of it. So anger and controlled anger, doing push-ups, is just one of the steps of the 5 transformation, because the 4th transformation is taking action. And anger, and as a result of that, for instance, punching a bag or doing push-ups, is taking action. And when you take action, it basically means that you have first ignore the voice of insecurity, because you cannot take action if you're insecure. Then you perhaps got inspiration or amused about the voice of insecurity, because that's the only way how you can let your voice of security be more dominant, become more louder. And the third transformation is that you let yourself be guided by the voice of security. For instance, that means that you think, oh, let's use this anger, let's use this insecurity as fuel, as power for working all day or becoming more successful. And the fourth transformation is taking action. And of course, the fifth transformation, because you need to balance your inner voices. It's also not a good thing if your voice of security is becoming too dominant, because you always need insecurity to balance the two inner voices with each other, and understand that you in the fifth transformation have to just befriend the two inner voices. Okay, let's go on to the next part.
Is a problem.
Right, anger can be used as a fuel and it's necessary. And from my framework, anger sometimes is a mask for pain.
I'd agree with that.
So did you experience pain in there? I know pain is a kind of an abstract word, but was it painful for you? Like, I want to know about your pain.
Yeah, it's strange because I'm being as honest as possible. It's strange because I had this instilled sense of duty where even though I'm in a jail cell and I can't leave, and even though I'm cripplingly bored, I don't feel like I had time to feel pain, or I didn't feel like I had time to be a victim.
You had nothing but time.
No, I didn't have time.
What are you talking about?
Because everyone outside still relied on me. So when I would get on the phone, people would...
Is that avoidance, though?
I don't know.
Do you keep busy? Do you avoid your feelings by keeping busy, being on the computer all the time?
All the things I had to do still had to be done. Just because they threw me in a cell, it just made it more difficult, which means I have less time than ever because the difficulty's been increased. And when I would get on the phone, we wouldn't discuss how I'm feeling. I'd be worried about how everyone else is. They'd be like, how are you? Yeah, I'm in jail. What's going on with this? Are you okay? Are your bills paid? Are press hassling you? I was worried about fixing everyone else's problems from jail more than I was concerned about myself or my own mental well-being. And if I felt particularly, when I say pain is an awkward one. I don't know if I felt pain because I don't feel sorry for myself, and I've developed this mindset of such absolute accountability that even though what happened to me I believe was unfair, and even though I'm completely innocent, I didn't think, why? I didn't think, why is this happening? I didn't think, why me? I didn't think, oh, this is unfair. Like, none of these things crossed my mind. I was like, this is garbage. However, you can't become the most Googled man in the world without, with every light has a dark, right? Like, let's be realistic about this.
Yeah.
I'm thrown in a jail cell. Do I belong here? No. But am I here? Yes. I was pretty logical about it. And I was like, okay, I've got a lot of things I need to get done. And I would feel angry if I couldn't get them done. But I don't think I felt pain. Now,
okay, let's first dive in anger from a psychological standpoint, because psychologist Harriet Lerner discusses how anger is not just an emotion to be vented or suppressed, but a powerful messenger that signals boundary violations and deep pain. It's a common facade for underlying feelings of hurt, fear, or powerlessness. Recognizing this, Lerner suggests allows us to use anger constructively to address injustices or personal grievance rather than destructively, which often leads to personal or rational harm. Okay, now let's focus on the inner voice instead of all this complicated stuff, and use the comment section below to share your experience with the inner voice of others. As we basically already discussed, anger and pain are all the result of the voice of insecurity. The insecurity voice is the dominant one, and that can result in anger, frustration, pain. And if you are more secure about the situation, you do not need to become angry. Because, for instance, if someone says a bad thing or bad things happen to you, if you are confident, more secure, and your voice of security is the more dominant one in that situation, or you have balanced inner voices, there is no need for you to become angry. And you only become angry when you are insecure. And you only experience pain, mental pain, if you're insecure. You cannot experience mental pain if you are secure, confident about something, because then you just do not care. Insecure people are people with a loud, dominant voice of insecurity in a particular part of their life. Because, as always, the inner voices act in different parts of your life. They act out in different parts of your life. So, for instance, in one situation or one part of your life, you can become or you can be very secure. For instance, your relationship, you can be very secure in that part. Or you suddenly can become very insecure in that part of your relation. So pain, anger, and all those things are a result of the inner voices, as we talked about in many parts of this video. But anger and all emotions, if you are able to control your inner voices, can be used as fuel. And basically, that's the second transformation. Because the first transformation is you just have to ignore all that feelings and that negative self-talk, the voice of insecurity, and then be inspired and amused. And inspiration and being amused can result in that you are more confident, becoming more secure, and then you can take action. And that's the fuel part. So the first three things is basically you turning anger into a positive thing as fuel for taking action, directed positive action. And then after you have taken action, you are able to reflect on situations and you are able to understand that you need both insecurity and security. So you just have to befriend them. And that's the 5 transformations. So let's get on to the last part.
Or I'll continue to work, and that's life.
Maybe life will keep giving you situations in which you'll have to confront that fear to resolve it.
Why would I want to resolve it?
Well, because...
I mean, if I'm really that tired, I'll sleep.
No, but fear creates distortions in our mind, right? I mean, fear is the seed of evil. Yeah. Right? And so we want to know what we're afraid of, because if we block our fear, we're susceptible to bad actions, right? And fooling ourselves about what they are, rationalizing. Yep. So I would argue that it's actually vital for you in the position that you are in and the responsibility that you have to actually confront your fear in a very real way, which probably goes back to your childhood. I mean, your dad was, I mean, the haircut story, and I don't know if you want to talk about that, if you're willing, but that's it. You know, when I read that, I'm thinking about that little boy. That must have been fucking terrifying.
It is, but I do think I had the best father on earth.
I'm not disputing that. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good that came from your father. I'm not disputing that your father was a good man. Yeah. When you say he could go from 0 to 100 like that for a little boy,
it's scary.
It's fucking scary.
It is, but
that fear has to be in you. You don't know what the fuck he's going to do.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
But I think that's prepared me for life fantastically. And I also think the fear.
But have you reached a limit? Have
tolerance?
you of the video game? I mean, you're facing all these charges, right? So something, and maybe this is what you need to go through. I mean, you're on the hero's journey, right? And this is inevitable in some way. But also along the hero's journey, you have to die to be reborn.
That's true, and I agree with all of that. But if I'm genuinely, I mean, I psychoanalyze myself all the time, which is one of the main reasons I don't believe in therapy and psychoanalysis.
You can't psychoanalyze yourself.
Of course you can. I do it myself.
You don't think that's hubris?
No.
You can know your own mind, that you don't need reflection from others to see yourself, that you can see yourself perfectly?
I think that, no, I don't think I can see myself perfectly, but I think that life is a perfect reflection.
But why not get help? Why not?
Because then it becomes a crutch. I like the idea that I can rely on myself to fix myself.
Well, you have a coach. Is that a crutch?
No, it's not, because he's teaching me something.
Okay, let's stop it right here and let's first dive into why confronting your fears is important from a psychological standpoint. Because again, Dr. Susan Jeffers, with her concept of feel the fear and do it anyway, highlights the importance of confronting fears to grow beyond them. Avoidance reinforces fear, but facing it diminishes its power over time, a phenomenon understood through exposure therapy. The action of confronting fears is empowering, providing us with evidence of our ability to endure and overcome, which in turn reduces psychological impact of those fears in the future. Okay, now let's first focus on the inner voice instead of all this complicated stuff, and use the comment section below to share your experience with the inner voice of other people. So here basically is where I do not agree about the things about fear. Fear through the lens of the inner voices are a result of the voice of insecurity. Because there is no fear if you're secure about something, if you're confident about something, then your fear is less. So insecurity and fear are tied together. And the more insecure you are, the more fear you experience. So the only thing you need to do is be able to control the two inner voices. If you are too insecure, so the voice of insecurity is the dominant one, you need to lower that voice or increase the voice of security. And then your fear will turn down. Just as for some people, they like horror movies. And the reason why they like horror movies is because their internal narrative tells them, I like the horror, I like the anxiety, I like the fear, and that's the voice of security that's doing the talking. And people who do not like horror films because they are so afraid of the things that might happen in a movie is because their voice of insecurity is the dominant one. It is as if they are experiencing what they see on the screen in real life. So your mind is playing a trick on you, and it can only happen if your voice of insecurity is the dominant one. And basically Tate, again, has a way of controlling his inner voices without him probably being aware of it, that he only has to deal with the two inner voices instead of all the complicated things that most psychologists talk about. There are more than 30,000 mental disorders, but in our understanding, it all comes down to the two inner voices and the balancing act of your two inner voices. So when you try to face your fears, what happens? You become more confident, and more confident means you become more secure. So the first time you are very afraid, like with an attraction in like with a roller coaster in an attraction park. Some people are so afraid, but then if you experience the roller coaster ride the first time, the next time you are more confident because you know what's going to happen. So your voice of insecurity becomes less dominant and your voice of security becomes more dominant. And that's why some people like roller coasters. They know they can handle them, and that handling gives them more confidence, so they become more secure. And insecurity is the reason why you are fearful of something. So if you are more secure, your insecurity, the fear will go away. And that's why confronting your fears can, and only if you understand the inner workings of your inner voice, result in more confidence because you have faced your fears. But you need to understand that it's all tied to the two inner voices. If you do not understand that, you will become fearful in the future again, and your fear will not go away. And that's why most psychotherapy does not work, because they never talk about the inner voices. And only if you are aware of the two inner voices, you are able to combat your fears. Okay, so thanks for watching. And until next time, in the meantime, listen to your inner voice and take control of your life. And let me know in the comments what videos you want me to make. See you next time.